All right, now to our first conversation. As Nigeria's financial market evolves, we're beginning to see something new and potentially transformative taking shape. The rise of structured finance products, not just as one-off issuances, but as repeat multi-series instruments, from recent listings on FMDQ Securities Exchange Limited to the successful rollout of sovereign bond-backed notes through special purpose vehicles. The question is no longer whether these instruments can work, but whether they can scale. Well, that shift raises some important questions. Joining me now to help us unpack this, we have Dr. Sonnie Ayere, is a Group CEO, DLM Capital Group. Joining me right here in the studio. It's great to have you, sir.
Good morning.
Happy Easter.
Thank you.
In arrears. Happy New Year. It's
Absolutely.
been a while. Great to have you again.
You too.
And
God
last
bless.
time we were here,
yeah,
we did talk about structured finance.
Of course.
And you had an issuance.
Yes.
Back then. How did that go?
Well, it was pretty successful. And it's one of the things we want to talk about today. Remember, that was sometime about September last year.
Yeah, about September.
That was when it was issued. And the first coupon, which includes the principal, has just been successfully paid, with ease, I might add, and excess to spare. So the investor appetite, the reality back then was that we've never seen this before. How can a AAA rated instrument be giving me 40+% return hold to maturity? So a few people were like, this is different. I don't understand.
Seems too good to be true.
Exactly, things like that. But, again, like everything else, it's always the proof is what? In the pudding. So being able to demonstrate, right, to investors that exactly what you see in the prospectus is exactly what's happening, has given investors a lot more, okay, hey, maybe I read this wrong. Maybe I should be looking at this again.
Right.
And we've had a few calls like, you know what, when you come for the next time, when you come for a Series 2, please make sure, we're there. So,
right.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Because, it's quite interesting. I remember that time we talked about it. It was a mixture of government debt.
Correct.
And some risk.
Some real sector cash flows.
Real sector cash flows.
Correct.
So, let's go back.
Let's go back. Yeah. So, sovereign bond composite notes. Basically, the word composite obviously means to compose, put two things together, right? Compose. And the whole idea was to combine cash flows coming from coupons of federal government bonds or sovereign bonds, all right, and cash flows coming from the real sector to give that beautiful enhanced yield to investors. Now, one of the beauties of this transaction is that whether or not, and I'm going to repeat this again for the audience, whether or not real sector cash flows come through, investors will still get their full principal and interest back. 100%, a mathematical certainty. Mathematical certainty. You will still get your principal and interest back, whether or not real sector cash flows come through. Now, what does that mean? It means for the first time, there is a product now that pension funds, asset managers can invest in that allows them to take real sector risk or any other sector risk, right?
Because some of us love risk.
Yes.
Because sometimes when it's not risky, it doesn't pay that well. When it's risky,
it pays well. But now this is where it is basically counterintuitive, because you now have an instrument that actually pays well, but
safe.
Correct. You see? So one of the reasons why it has the AAA rating is because it does not, right, have, in terms of when the rating process actually excludes monies coming from the real sector. It only takes into account cash flows that are coming from sovereign. And that cash flow is sufficient to cover.
So technically, we're moving from the plain vanilla debts. That's FGN bonds and T-bills. The one most investors are used to, most especially retail.
Correct.
At this time. So, definitely you've spoken to investor appetite. I guess it was quite strong, and most of it is institutional investors.
Correct.
What's happening with retail?
Well, I mean, it's not that retail can do this also, right? Something that I would need to look at with the Securities and Exchange Commission, because obviously for something of this nature, you'd want the SEC to actually, it's obviously this transaction as is, it's SEC approved, but it's SEC approved for qualified institutional investors, not for retail investors at this point in time.
I'm sure retail investors will be watching on the sideline and saying,
yes, we all might, exactly. But to say something, and this is kind of like a conversational detour here, is that we're also working on something that will be fantastic for retail investors, especially now at the beginning of the equities boom, where we're now creating a product that would allow retail investors be able to take risk within the equities market, but for the first time have the certainty that the money invested will be returned. Yes. So, unlike in those days, let's take the last crash, right? Which was 2008, 9.
And some of us, many people have not recovered.
Exactly. So, but the thing is, then people went to the market completely naked. Yeah? So you took the risk 100%, right? If it goes well, it goes well. And if it doesn't, there was, I think, circa 70% drop in the index back then. So a lot of people lost their shirts. What we now, from that experience, we're working on something now that would ensure that that never happens to the retail or even institutional investor going forward. So there's something in the pipeline that's dedicated for retail guys.
Yeah, because I guess the average investor out there that's retail, they've been through a lot.
Oh yes.
No,
we know
coming
that.
in from
we know that.
2025 into 2026, the first quarter.
Yeah, so
the war in Iran, we're paying so much.
I know.
You just buy fuel, and some of us say, I don't have money to invest.
Yeah.
At this point, but at the same time, I want to invest.
Yes.
I want to make money. I want to make wealth.
Absolutely. So there, another area that needs to be considered and worked on is also tokenization. Real world asset tokenization, which again, the SEC, the Securities and Exchange, you really have to commend the Securities and Exchange Commission for what they're doing, helping to really enhance and develop and widen the scope of products available. But you see, the cool thing about tokenization would be that for the first time, you're able to also now buy take for instance the refinery, tokenizing that would allow the average person, when I say average person, let's put it bluntly, the mekunu on the street will be able to put his, whether it's 500, whether it's 1,000 naira, do you get a point, right? Token. So that whatever value it brings in future, that investor can also participate in that value creation or wealth creation. All right. So in other words, that will be bringing it right down to the bottom, of the pyramid, so to speak, and really totally, open the floodgates to a real diversified shareholder base, using that sort of technology.
Yeah,
all
definitely.
Right? Yeah.
Interesting to see how far tokenization actually goes, especially in a country like Nigeria. We're definitely rooting for that.
We're going to do it
going forward. So we have the listing on the FMDQ exchange.
Yes.
What does that mean for investors in practical terms?
So when we were marketing back in September, I remember telling investors then that this bond would be the most valuable corporate bond on the street. And of course, a lot of people thought, Yimu, so to speak,
Right.
Exactly, which means, all right. But, it was so gratifying to see that when it was actually listed, it did become the most valuable. And I expect it to become the most valuable. In fact, continuously, because as the bond pays down, right, the yield continues to go higher and higher and higher. And therefore, the value is expected also to go higher. So, it really was gratifying to see that happen. And for me as a person, looking at it from conception, which is sitting down somewhere and thinking, how can I create this, right up to the point where, it's finally, it's like, think about it. You conceptualize, you go through the rating agencies, you go through the financial modeling, you go through the legalese, you go through the SEC approval process, then you have to go market it. Do you know what I mean? And then after marketing, you then have to get it listed. And after that, we still do, by the way, quarterly performance reports. So that again brings transparency to the product. So what this means is every quarter, investors are brought up to speed as to how much has been collected, all right, where's sitting, so on and so forth, so you know exactly how your underlying transaction is performing. That's one of the beauties of structured finance, by the way, different from plain vanilla. Plain vanilla, you have what is called event risk. Okay, a company is there today, it might not be there tomorrow. All right, just being exaggerating to explain my point. But with structured deals, right, which are predominantly based on cash flows, right, you can actually see the cash flows coming through. All right, and when you see a deterioration in them, right, you already have an idea of how the deal may not be doing as well as I thought it would do. Some people might actually get out by then. You know what I mean? And if you see it doing exactly how it's expected or doing better, so on and so, same story. But the most important thing is that is one of the big differences between structured deals and plain vanilla deals. Right? Is that with structured deals, they're based on cash flows. You can consistently see those cash flows coming through, normally through your performance reports. Sometimes they're monthly, sometimes they're quarterly. But the whole idea is to make sure that the investor is given as much, well, I wouldn't even say as much, total transparency on the underlying collateral and the cash flows being collected.
So with your experience so far, in this process, where would you identify as the risk points? And for where we are right now, starting this new type of investment for this market, do you see it growing in Nigeria as structured finance?
Oh, yeah.
And help us point out those risks that you think investors should be educated about.
Okay, so let me go back a second. I mean, the first structured deal, actually, in Africa, I was involved in that. 2001. Tequini, it was called. It was South Africa. It was a company called SA Home Loans, and they were doing mortgage securitization. In fact, it was the first transaction I worked on when I joined IFC in Washington. Right? That was 2001, which is what now, 25, 26 years ago.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, so. All right, so that was the beginning of structured deals. Again, I'm excluding MENA. MENA means Middle East, North Africa. Right, so I'm talking about, but I think it's derogatory, but Africa shop down. That word I don't like it. Anyway, so that whole part of Africa, that's the first deal. The second deal, I was also involved in that. That was when we did FMBN, Federal Mortgage Bank, 2006, 26 billion back then, under 100 billion mortgage securitization program. That was when Obasanjo was president, and monetization. I don't remember when civil servants were given the right to buy their homes back then, right? So the loans to buy those homes were then securitized, all right, under a guarantee provided by the federal government. Our dear senior sister, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, was finance minister at the time, right. And I worked with, of course, then I was a UBA Global Markets, which is now United Capital, UCAP, and that deal was successfully consummated. Yeah, that was then. And then we had, I think, if memory serves me right, we had another transaction, CEPAC, right? CEPAC was it's like Nigeria's green card, right? Where foreign people that work in Nigeria have to pay a specific annual amount. The acronym escapes me right now because they had something like alien something. But anyway, it's called CEPAC. And again, that transaction was another fantastic. That was the first future flow. So the transaction we talked about, the first one in South Africa was a mortgage-backed securitization. The first one in Nigeria was mortgage-backed securitization. The third one was a future flow. transaction, which is basically securitizing cash flows that are expected to come in the future. Again, when that was being marketed in 2017, if memory serves me right, skepticism everywhere, especially from the funds, all right? But, by the time we were paying off that bond, it was so gratifying to see that 90% of the holders were all pension funds. Yes. Because it had performed so brilliantly well, as predicted. That's one thing people need to understand about these deals. Structured deals are like mathematical precisions. It's not like, credit is credit, and I understand credit, but this is mathematical computations where, and that's why numbers are brilliant. 1 + 1 is 2. You can't, there's no way about it. Exactly. So the reality basically is it's all about computing these flows, and you're looking at what is the probability that these cash flows will continue. And going back to the age-old saying, we have to look at where we're coming from to know where we're going. So it's almost like saying, if these cash flows have been doing this well for this period of time under all these sort of stress scenarios, then the probability that they continue, all right, is pretty high. And that is why it's possible to then assign ratings of AAA, AA, and so on and so forth, based on cash flow predictability. All right? So now we're moving into, sovereign, what we've done here with the sovereign composites is actually, another thing special about it was first transaction structure that allowed a company to raise money at the AAA level when it's a BBB minus. That was a 9-notch upgrade.
Wow.
Without securitizing, by the way. You see?
That's a huge deal.
Oh, yeah. And that's why, yes, according to ChatGPT, Claude, first ever. Never done before. So those are the beauties about this. And, it's like when you're able to put your mind to something and say, we will make this happen with that sort of conviction. I always believe that nothing's impossible, so long as it really is down to how bad you want it to happen. And can it scale? Absolutely can scale. Why do I think it will scale? It's because as investors begin to understand the fact that this product is allowing me to invest in different sectors, but giving me, for lack of a better word,
right.
Yeah, capital preservation at the minimum. So if I let go of 10 billion or 20 or 30, right? I know that come what may, my 30 will come back.
Fantastic. But I'm going to hold you. I'm going to hold that thought for a moment now. Yeah. Let's join the live coverage now for National Police Day 2026. That's for our DSTV subscribers, but you can still follow the money right here on Business Morning. Definitely been an interesting one.
Thank you.
And I know that we're going to see other series,
of course,
coming at this time, and investors are trying to beat a lot of things now. Yeah. We're trying to beat inflation. We're trying to beat that's for retail.
No, even institutionals want to beat inflation.
They're trying to beat inflation.
Of course, yeah.
High interest rate environment and all of that, doing business.
Yep.
What are you seeing going forward? For the economy.
For the economy?
Yeah.
Look, I see the economy doing very well. Okay. The policies that have been put in place, that are being implemented. And I know Nigerians, we're all going through a very painful time right now. It's very painful, But let me use the Bible adage, it shall pass. It shall pass. People, it shall pass. Like everything else, a house is not built in a day. It takes time. And during that period, you go through a lot of pain. And that's what's going on right now. It's like really restructuring a lot of the flaws of the past, all right, to achieve some form of sustainable long-term growth. I think what Nigeria basically needs is that, even from a political standpoint, it's just a level of certainty and continuity going forward, so that policies continue to really build on top of each other, rather than build, dismantle, then build, dismantle, build, dismantle. We need to come to a point where So that way, once that pain has passed, it's passed and it's passed for good. You know, but my own view is that a lot has been done. Private sector, people like Dangote, you know, have done, you know, amazingly well in terms of helping the economy with the refinery. We've got to say that. Cement, you know, national production rather than import, used to be. So a lot of these things, you know, they take time to manifest, but the reality is, and then also in terms of cost of things, the reality is that, you know, like in economics, is that the wages have to rise. It can be sticky, as they're using the term that we use in economics. It can be sticky, but the reality is that wages will eventually rise and exceed. Let me give you an example. Let's go back to 2007, when the Naira was about 100 and something, yeah? And it was a real feel-good time, yeah? I want you to think about people who lived when it was 1980, when Naira was 5 Naira. Do you think they would have ever conceived that people would say 100 Naira, 100 and whatever is fantastic and it's a good time? Thank you. The same way, in 10 years' time, you know, 1,000 would look like, wow. Hopefully, we'll never go beyond that.
Hopefully.
Thank you.
Yes.
But the point basically is that we need to get to the point where wages, etc., exceed that, and we're also able to achieve and maintain stable macroeconomic indicators, which I have to give, again, kudos to the central banking team led by Cardoso, Philip Ikerzo, and so on. You know, great job that they're doing there too.
And we definitely pray, you know, we continue to see stability and maybe some strengthening, you know, at some point.
It will happen. It will happen. Look, the reality is, if not for the Iran conflict and stuff, right? Naira would have probably been somewhere about 1,000 or maybe 1,200.
Yeah, because we have so many projections.
Yeah,
you know,
it would have been around
1,000, 1,000.
Yeah.
We do hope the war ends as soon as possible. Thank you so much. Always great having this conversation with you. I'm Dr. Sonnie Ayere, is a Group CEO, DLM Capital Group. Thank you so much for spending the after Easter with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. God bless.
All right, we'll take a break now. When we come back, what's happened so far and what next? That's next. Do stay with us.